Draisaitl loads up. Bouchard fires.
This is Evan Bouchard. Crazy question, but is he even good at hockey? Okay, stupid question, right? Plays on the Edmonton Oilers, the team that's made the finals out of the West in back-to-back years. If you look at points, he's among the best in the league among defensemen, but they get even better in the playoffs where he entered all-time company last year. Analytics love him too. The Athletic rated him as a near $11 million defenseman, and we'll talk more about that later, but then there's moments like this, and this, and this, and you think to yourself, okay, is this guy even good at hockey? Well, let's figure that out. Evan Bouchard was the 10th overall pick in the 2018 draft, which is arguably the best defenseman draft in this era. It started with Rasmus Dahlin, who was projected as a generational talent for defensemen. You don't hear people talking about it as much now, but at the time, people considered him about as sure as a prospect as one could possibly be in today's league. He's been great, but, Buffalo, what are you going to do? Quinn Hughes was taken a couple picks later, and after winning a Norris and becoming the best defenseman in Vancouver history, it's meant that Evan Bouchard was always number 3 in this draft, even at his best. Which is tough because pre-draft he was absolutely gross. On the London Knights, arguably the best program in Canadian junior hockey, in a year with 7 future NHL players on the team, as an 18-year-old defenseman, Bouchard was the captain and he led the team by 33 points. Again, 18 years old, and there was no defenseman in the Ontario Junior Hockey League with more points in him that season from 2016 until 2023, when an overager, Pavel Mintyukov, beat him by 1 point. This is some important context in the psyche of Evan Bouchard. He was absolutely unreal in junior hockey, but for his entire draft year and for the following seasons, he was overshadowed by the draft class he was in. Well, flash forward to today, and after putting up an 80-point season, finishing 5th in Norris voting, and beating Paul Coffey to have the single playoff run assist record among defensemen, we have a pretty good picture of what Evan Bouchard is and who he is at the NHL level. But before we continue, I gotta talk to you real quick about this video sponsor, Koshi. This is a platform that lets you trade contracts in the hockey world. If you're not a finance major, it's basically making predictions that cost, say, 18 cents, and if that prediction comes true, then you get $1. A major plus for Koshi is that it's available in all 50 states, but the reason why I decided to team up with them is that these guys aren't a sports book. They're a financial exchange, like the stock market. The reason that's so significant is that you're not playing against a house that's set up against you with calculated odds. You're playing against other people. A really cool part about Koshi is that it moves and adjusts in real time. A big momentum shift of the game or maybe a big goal, it can change the real-time odds. There aren't any locked positions and you can trade whenever you want. These guys obviously sponsor the video, so there's natural bias here, but I really think if you're interested in putting money on a game or a series, Koshi is the most natural way to do it. There's no ridiculous parlays that could theoretically 100x your money if Matthews scores 7 goals. It's just who's winning or who's not winning. You can use my link in the description or just head to Kalshi.com and use code BIGHEAD. When you trade your first $100, they'll throw in $20 for free. Okay, back to the video.
Desperation hockey. Every team needs it.
Smart fans understand what Evan Bouchard is, and I can't help the ones that don't.
So, Evan Bouchard. Who the hell is this guy and what is he good at? Well, yeah, he's definitely known for his shot. His playmaking is actually very, very good. His specialty is in the breakout pass, where he might be the best in the league at quickly turning it around from the defensive end into the offensive end. It leads to the occasional turnover, but these plays are exceptionally difficult to make. You gotta find the tape from over 100 feet away while they're moving at nearly full speed with the defender on them. These breakout passes have been basically a crutch for Edmonton in terms of generating rush offense. No defenseman in hockey has had a better rate of rush shot assists than Bouchard, and that's while he's munching significant minutes for the Oilers. And despite sitting back on his heels a fair bit, his skating is actually quite solid. Overall, he plays a less dynamic game than other guys in a similar category as him. I think this is partly by design and partly just what a good fit looks like. McDavid and Draisaitl really don't need someone to run circles in the offensive zone. They need someone who can think on their level, chip in to act potentially as a winger at times, make zone entries and exits easier, but most importantly, they need predictability to run plays off of. Bouchard fits that mold perfectly. The playmaking is unbelievable, he's a great skater and he fits well with the team, but the shot is his best and most distinguishable trait in the game. When you think about Bouchard, you just think of his shot first and foremost. He's unbelievable at finding shooting lanes and he has one of the best slap shots in hockey. If you want to explain away some of his points, he plays with McDavid and Draisaitl, yeah, sure, okay, he gets a couple points from them every once in a while, sure. But They are not cradling him from behind while he takes a slap shot like my wife's boyfriend does. That's all Bouchard, baby. He's one of the few defensemen still in hockey who can take a 90-mile-an-hour slap shot on a regular basis, and he's probably the current king of the slap shot. He leads the playoffs in slap shot goals, slap shot shots, and most 90-mile-an-hour slap shots. It's even got his own nickname, the Bouch Bomb. It sounds sick.
Term Bouch Bomb, it's pretty funny at this point.
Which, when it comes to sports, having a sick nickname is half the battle sometimes. But this shot is also a major feature on the power play, which has also become a major conversation topic with Bouch. The second he gets to play with McDavid and Draisaitl on the power play, he starts collecting points. Okay, well, at the same time, as soon as he gets to play on power play 1, the power play gets significantly more efficient. In 2022-23, he played on power play 1 in the playoffs, and the Oilers, in 53 games played since then, have 33.8% efficiency on that power play. And no surprise that Bouchard is tied with McDavid for power play points in the same time frame for first in the NHL. In fact, since Bouchard entered power play 1 playing with McDavid and Draisaitl, there are only 3 teams that have more power play goals total in the playoffs than Bouchard has power play points. Dallas, Florida, and Edmonton. Go figure. It just makes sense so. Bouchard is everything you want in a power play quarterback and more. What you'll really like about his game though is his poise and general hockey IQ. He makes a ton of simple plays and he makes them look easy. You'll rarely see him go for the extreme, and that might play into why his eye test doesn't look as good. His value comes from making the right pass 20 times in a row instead of making a flashy play once every other game. This calm demeanor means his play picks up in the playoffs when simple plays are so important. He rarely gets exposed in the playoffs, and when the entire Oilers engine is running at full capacity, he generates an obscene amount of advantage for Edmonton, while his mistakes, if and when they show up, can be covered by teammates. Which, yeah, you know, he definitely has his weaknesses. One of them being physicality, which, you know, he's usually near the bottom of the totem pole for hits on a season. Right before the final started, he's had fewer hits than Jeff Skinner, and Jeff Skinner has played just 2 games this playoffs, and it's literally Jeff Skinner. The intensity in his game also looks like it's lacking sometimes. He'll turn the puck over in the offensive zone, and some will call it poise, but some will call it lazy ass syndrome, and he opts to sit back and let Vegas break out instead of pinching. All in all, you could definitely say it was a smart play, but you still watch him and you feel like there is something missing and there's something else he could be doing in these moments. On the penalty kill, he gets the puck with a minute remaining and calmly tries to float it deep into the neutral zone. If you have time and space, absolutely the right play to kill as much time as possible, but he doesn't have enough time, and Vegas recovers the puck and sets it up on the power play. No intensity in this moment, and it's a mistake that Edmonton has to recover from. Okay, now the big weakness, if you want to call it that, is defense, because generally put, the defense isn't necessarily bad, but it's not necessarily great either. The analytics love him in this department, but his frame doesn't do any work along the boards, and a lot of his puck battles require a second Edmonton Oiler to help him win it, especially if it's a bigger body on him. The transition defense is great though, like this is glossed over a ton. No defenseman on Edmonton has a better rate of forcing dump-ins. He's got great skating, and I talk about the hockey IQ, but it really is excellent both offensively and defensively. Now, he also does have extremely high turnover figures, but I think this is a result of just having a lot of possession in his own end and a lot of attempted breakouts. When you're trying these extremely difficult passes as often as Bouchard does, you're going to encounter a lot of giveaways. That being said, giving the puck away in the neutral zone off a breakout pass is definitely different from giving it up in your own zone, and that's where we talk about an important part of this guy's game, the turnover concept, as I call it. I think this is the most important element of Bouchard's game for fans who don't watch him as much as they would like. There are probably countless examples of him getting absolutely worked along the boards, turning the puck over in an inopportune time, or just looking like an absolute bum. But somehow, the statistics have never shown Bouchard as being a detriment defensively. Mike Kelly from Sportlogic showed that while, yes, he has a lot of turnovers, it's more likely a result of how often the puck is on his stick. The rate of turnovers per possession is actually phenomenally low. You dig a little deeper and you see that when he turns it over, it's not more likely to be a major chance against, it's about average. His turnovers are normal. His blunders aren't any worse than an average defenseman, and they happen at a low enough rate that really, the few clips that you're seeing per season all over Twitter, that's most of them. A lot of the turnovers that look quite bad are a result of heavy pressure from the opposing team, as well as Bouchard being in a dangerous position because he's thinking about generating offense. I don't think it's a lack of hockey IQ, and I don't think I would classify him as bad defensively. Really, where I see the issue on the defensive end is a bit more of an intangible, and that's the lack of intensity. I think more effort could ultimately prevent some of these ridiculous breakdowns, but he just doesn't really have the fire in his belly. Now, that lack of intensity is where I think Bouchard's reputation teeters. He didn't get a spot for Team Canada at the Four Nations despite McDavid being such a prevalent face of the team, and yet, looking back at the 2014 Olympics, Chris Letang didn't get an invite to Team Canada after being a Norris finalist the year before and playing with Sidney Crosby. But really, I think Bouchard not making the team comes down to one, Bouchard's strengths are so good, but for a tournament with such little prep time like the Four Nations, sometimes it's easier to play safer players with fewer potential weaknesses than introduce a guy who could have a lot of advantage or could be the reason they lost the tournament. And reason number two, if you assume that Cale Makar can do the same or a better job than what Bouchard does, then is it really worth bringing Bouchard when he might be hunted on matchups while not bringing his own physicality? Listen, I don't know for sure. If I had to guess though, he will get an invite to Team Canada at the 2026 Olympics, whether or not he is an Edmonton Oiler. Because guess what, guys? His contract is up this year, and he is due for a ridiculous raise. Remember when I said The Athletic had his value at $11 million this season? Well, he was getting paid just $3.9 million. This is a summer of offer sheets, with the lower draft compensation going the other way, and Edmonton isn't necessarily flush with cash. All that to say, if there was ever a major restricted free agent to leave his team this decade, it's Evan Bouchard this summer. So let's look at the potential offers. Okay, so it's a little complicated, but you land on $11.7 million for 5 years at a $58.5 million contract. Basically, if you pay any more per year, then the draft compensation goes from 2 first-round picks, a second and a third-round pick, to 4 first-round picks, which is a lot more. And if you were to raise a number of years in a simplified way, it still raises the amount of draft compensation you have to send because it treats it as though the total value of the contract is still divided by 5. But $11.7 million by 5 years means that you could see a team like Boston, potentially, trying to immediately recover from their poor season and build a defensive core with Lindholm, Bouchard, Zadorov, McAvoy. They would still have $14 million left over for the rest of their depth signings. Even better, the way that the draft compensation works, they would actually be able to keep their next year first round pick in the chance that they still want to tank, and they would send their 2027 and 28 first round picks. Boston just finished 5th last in the league last year, but the team has a track record of never really wanting to tank. If they see that Bouchard could be a good fit long term, this could end up being a major splash that brings them, well, maybe not into contender status, but at least into being a playoff hopeful team in the East. Kind of fitting the mold of the retool, not rebuild that we're seeing more and more in the NHL. Columbus, on the other hand, is kind of just opening up their window now, and adding Bouchard would make their offense genuinely lethal. This would be such a crazy run and gun team that they kind of have to be considering the possibility, especially with the $40 million in cap space they have entering this offseason. They still have some signings to make, but if they sign this contract and have $28 million left over, they have way more than enough to sign their guys. They could even go add another free agent if they really wanted, but after missing the playoffs by 3 points, getting to add a superstar defenseman to a group with Fantilli, Kent Johnson, Marchenko, Sillinger, Voronkov, and Monahan means this group could honestly look like New York in the late 2010s, where they're suddenly a playoff contender out of nowhere. But the final option might end up being the most likely of them all, Carolina. They obviously are big fish hunters. They went after Gensel. They lost him to free agency. They went after Rantanen. He didn't want to sign there. If they can convince Bouchard to sign in Raleigh, this squad could actually be ready to win another cup. Slavin is pound for pound the best defensive defenseman alive. There isn't anyone better to pair with Bouchard around the NHL. The only reason this might not work is if he doesn't fit the system in terms of personality, but then I look at Brent Burns, Tony DeAngelo, and Shane Gostisbehere. There's clear room for an offensive defenseman to thrive in Carolina, even if you're not a great player outside of that. So imagine if you are a great player like Evan Bouchard is, and you get to instantly join a contender while picking up a ton of money. Could be tempting. It's also worth noting that the salary cap is going up immensely in the next few years, so on any of these deals, a 5-year contract could be better than an 8-year contract, because the new contract when he's 30 years old could be worth double the amount of money potentially. Now, this whole scenario leaves Edmonton kind of with their dick in their hands, because they would have either no right side on defense if they let Bouchard walk, or they would have no depth if they choose to match the contract. Immediately, they would be in a position to ship out Kane, Arvidsson, and Henrique, which would all potentially cost draft capital, something Edmonton doesn't have much of. Still, if Bouchard does choose to sign with one of these teams, I think the Oilers have to match it. So the $11.7 million for Bouchard means that they'll play next season with nearly $50 million paid out to just 4 players. That's a lot of money before McDavid, Ekholm, Wallman, and Kulak are all due for raises the year after. Overall, Edmonton could be out of luck here. Evan Bouchard is a superstar defenseman, and he's been paramount in Edmonton's rise to dominance the past few seasons. They kind of need him for this whole team to work, and while you'll hear about how much of a McDavid merchant he is, I think it's way more of a symbiotic relationship. They rely on each other to be successful in the playoffs. Whether you're convinced or not of Bouchard's defensive game, you still have to be convinced of his offensive game. The question isn't about whether it's elite or not, it's about how far away he is from being the best. He's not there yet, but he's not that far off either. One of the most polarizing players in hockey, but we know one thing for sure. Yes, Evan Bouchard is good at hockey.